It's a bike that's been available in other markets around the world for quite some time, but Honda finally decided to bring the GB350s, as it's known here, to Europe. So what is this pretty little retro single all about? This video has been brought to you with the kind support of Bikesure. Bikesure have been in the business of insuring bikes for over 30 years. They are a specialist broker who pride themselves in treating every customer as an individual. It doesn't matter what you ride, from stock bikes like this to classics to trikes to scooters, wild customs, they will find a policy that's right for you. And if your collection should feature all or some of these, then they have multi-bike policies too. So if you're looking for a brand new policy or indeed renewing an existing one, then give the Bikesure team a call so they can tailor a quote specifically for your individual needs, whatever they may be. You can find the details in a link in the description down below. Well, I have to start with looks, which I know is a subjective topic, but there's no denying that the GB350s is a lovely looking machine. It's got those classic retro lines, and if you were to ask a kid to draw a motorcycle, this is what they'd draw. The Pucco blue paintwork on this 15-litre tank is thick and luxurious, and everywhere you look the levels of finish are very high, particularly when you take into consideration the list price of this, which is £3,949. There are two other colours in the lineup: pearl deep mud grey and gunmetal black metallic. A beautifully finished 348cc air-cooled single-cylinder powers the bike, putting out 21 horsepower and 29 newton-meters of torque. Now that doesn't sound like much, because it isn't, quite frankly, but this bike is surprisingly nippy and smooth, but more on that later. That power is fed to the rear wheel via a 5-speed gearbox with a slip assist clutch, and that clutch has got a very, very light action. The seat height sits at 800mm, which makes this actually quite a decent sized bike. I'm 5'10" with a 32-inch inside leg, and it doesn't feel like I'm riding a small little machine. That could be a problem for some smaller riders. However, at 178 kilos, this bike is very manageable and very easy to move around. Once perched on that seat, the cockpit is neat and functional, with a mix of analog and digital outputs on the display, which are really easy to read. It's a nice looking display too, retro but with a modern twist. Controls are tidy and easy to operate, and the whole riding position is relaxed and comfortable. The GB350s has decent spec for the money, with LED lights and a centre stand coming as standard, and of course there are a plethora of accessories from Honda for you to either to dress this bike up or prepare it for your travels. And that of course is the most important part, so let's get this out on the road and see how she rides. So let's talk a little bit about comfort, and I'll start off on some roads that I know are a bit bumpy, a bit lumpy. As I said at the start of this, you know, it's a decent sized bike. It's not like I feel I'm trying to squeeze onto something small. I don't really feel like a circus gorilla riding a bike. Ergonomically it's fantastic, a nice gentle reach to the bars. I haven't got my legs too bent up. The pegs are not too high, they're not too far back, they're in a good position. And the seat is really good. Now, I've not spent days and days on it at a time, but being out for a few hours, I've had no cause to feel like I need to get off and stretch my legs. It's a wonderfully comfortable seat, and actually the ride is really good as well. One thing that really struck me when I first jumped on this is just how good the suspension setup is for stock on what is a inexpensive bike. Mud, slidey. Very nicely sprung, not bouncy. I was expecting it to be a bit harsh and a bit bouncy, but it's not at all, and it gives really decent feedback. I'm very impressed for what is a basic non-adjustable setup. And on roads like this, I've been down here on other bikes where I'm getting kind of chucked out of the seat a little bit. The GSX-8S is a bit like that. It's quite harsh, the rebound's pretty fast, and on roads like this I'm constantly bouncing up and down and getting thrown about. This is a much more comfortable experience. And this is the sort of place where this bike is completely at home. But you can just get out, thump around, enjoy the scenery, enjoy the roads, and have a hell of a lot of fun. So the engine, that 348 air-cooled single cylinder, is quite a peppy little machine. But as any of you know that ride small capacity bikes, riding a bike to its limit and getting it on the stops and feeling like you're really riding it is often more rewarding than riding a really powerful bike where you're only able to, you know, use a small percentage of its performance. But this is much peppier than I thought it would be. It's pretty smooth as well. Dual balancer shafts in it help to keep the vibrations to a minimum, and I get, you know, a little bit out of the pegs and a small amount out of the bars, but really not very much at all. It's actually on the smoother side of what you'd experience from a single. Yeah, there's vibes there, but they've been isolated very well, and the only real sense you get from it is that thump from the engine. It's a really flexible little motor. It's quite happy to pull in higher gears. Yeah, of course, with 21 horsepower and 29 newton meters of torque, there are limits to it, but I don't feel like it's a hindrance. Yeah, I hit the limiter there in second. So whilst city and town riding, back lanes and B roads are where you can have a lot of fun on this bike, it can work on motorways as well. Now obviously this isn't a motorway, but the speed limit is 70 miles an hour, and that is exactly what I am doing, and it feels like this bike will just do this all day long. Very understressed, nice and relaxed. I'm not really getting much in the way of vibes. Those dual balancer shafts are really helping out with that, and it trips along quite nicely. It takes a little bit of a while to get there, and my stature, over 200 pounds, is not really ideal for this bike. But having said that, it trumps along quite nicely. So I'm pinned in third there at 60, and up into fourth, and there we go. The motorways, you wouldn't necessarily want to do a lot of it. That's not what this bike is for, but it's not going to feel out of place at all. Yeah, and for me, with the wind drag that I'm producing on my weight, about 75 is where this is going to top out. The one thing that has impressed me, as well as the suspension and the smoothness and flexibility engine, is the handling. Now obviously the weight has a lot to do with that. 178 kilos, not massively light I guess, but very noticeable. As you can see, around town here, 30 miles an hour, third gear. We're just thumping along, sipping at the petrol. He said Honda claim somewhere in the low 90s in terms of fuel economy. I think you'd have to be riding it incredibly carefully to get that, but I would imagine 60s and 70s is easily achievable. And actually I've got a little bit on here that shows me, a little sign there which you might be able to see, that says Eco. If I give it a bit more gas it goes away, and if I shut it off the Eco light comes on. Not really sure what that adds. Maybe it just makes you feel better that you can know I'm riding economically. But yeah, around town this is just a lovely little thumper. And on a day like today, really, what more could you want? Yeah, that guy on the Suzuki's probably going to have a more thrilling time than I am. Is he going to have more fun? Arguably not. So we saw the Speedo briefly earlier on, and I have to say it's a really good little display, nice and clear. I've got a big sweeping analog speedometer marked in miles per hour and kilometers per hour, which actually some bikes do miss. And then you've got a little digital display that shows my total trip, the time, my fuel level, what gear I'm in. So a nice little LCD bit on there. Really neat, easy to use. It's an incredibly simple bike, as you'd expect. no fancy buttons or whatever. On the clock I've just got 2 on the side here for kind of resetting the trip meter and then skipping through what it will show on the display. On the right hand side I've got a hazard switch and a starter. On the left hand side I've got my indicators, my main beam switch and headlight switch here, and a horn, which is a weedy little horn, but you know, most bikes are. But I've been incredibly impressed with the fit and finish on the bike. Really impressed with that. Everywhere you look, everything's nicely done. You know, the paint looks thick and luxurious, as I said at the beginning. The materials that are used are nice. There's bits of chrome here and there. The fastenings are all good. It's just generally a really nicely put together piece of machinery. And it has been interesting because filming this, I've had more people chatting to me than I normally get on any other bike. Now generally it's gentlemen of a particular age. I was up at the airfield today filming my PC camera, and there's always a few guys buzzing around there, and everybody came over and said, oh my god, what a beautiful machine. That reminds me of my and they talk about, you know, a bike they had back in the day, a BSA or a Greaves or whatever it is, and they were all impressed at the level of finish. 350 single, they were like, that's perfect, that's exactly what I would need. And they were all as well equally impressed with the price when I told them how much you could buy one of these for brand new. Obviously there's quite a bit of competition now in this space. This would probably go up against something like the Triumph Speed 400, fantastic little bike that, but £5,195, so more than £1,000 more expensive than this. Our Royal Enfield Hunter, I guess, is another bike you would put up against this in a similar sort of price bracket, slightly more expensive, only just, not very much at all. But I think this is going to do really well. It looks fantastic. I think if you wanted to start faffing around with it, you bike shed guys want to start messing around with it, I think there's plenty of options to do stuff with that. But as it is, it's just very nice looking classic bike styling, and it's a bike I think you could own, have a lot of fun riding and really enjoy owning. I'm quite smitten by it, I really am. It does sound quite nice as well, this bike. When I first started it, when it arrived, when it was cold, on tickover it sounded a bit like a bubble machine. It was just pop 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 in the way. Again, it just harks back to those old days when everybody was bouncing around on sub 500cc single cylinder bikes. Gear shift is slick. This clutch is incredibly light. One finger, I even do that with my little pinky finger. An effortless bike to ride. Yeah, lovely, absolutely lovely. Brakes are decent, kind of what you expect. They're not the sharpest in the world, but they'll pull you to a stop pretty quickly. As I mentioned, the handling is really good. It feels planted, it feels very solid. Bike doesn't really get upset. Even on washboardy approaches into corners, it's very much one of those point and squirt bikes. It's got Metzeler Tourance tyres on it, which are that kind of, I don't know, 90-10 I suppose, road off-road. But yeah, very sure-footed. It rides and handles much better than you think a £4,000 bike would be. It's not a budget bike, it's an inexpensive bike, but I wouldn't class it as a budget bike. It doesn't feel like Honda have cut any corners. As I said, the fit and finish is lovely, the componentry is really good, there's a lot of attention to detail. Obviously it's not having to deal with huge speeds and huge amounts of power, but it's a very nice package. If you want a bike in your garage to get out on a sunny day like this and just go and explore A roads, B roads, backcountry lanes, even a few byways, I think that's a good point to show you the brakes. Ooh, yeah, they're good. They're surprisingly good. I'm going to have to say it again, it has got a very good ride quality. I use this road quite a bit because it is lumpy, bumpy, there's potholes, there's weird camber, odd surfaces. And I'm going through here very comfortably. Obviously you've seen it in the preamble, but let's give you a quick look around it out in the wild. There you go. What a fantastic looking thing. I like the colour, Puco blue, I don't know what that means, sounds a bit weird. Really nicely shaped seat, super comfy. Nice little passenger foot peg with a little hill guard for the exhaust. It's these little details that make the difference. Blacked out exhaust, looks good. Nice bit of shiny chrome. 17-inch rear, 19-inch front, I don't think I mentioned that. Yeah, it's a bike that looks good whatever angle you look at it. Ah. No, and there's one thing I didn't notice. There's a little helmet lock on the back as well. Get out of the way, pheasant. Hardly an off-road challenge, but this is not an off-road bike. It's going to allow you to get down to places like this and find interesting spots. To be honest, it's not that bad standing up on it. Ooh, that's a big hole. So there you go, a bit of unexpected dirt in the review as well. So there we go, it's a lovely looking bike without doubt, really nicely finished, and it has the promise of Honda reliability. It is of course great fun to ride, an absolute hoot. It's got a decent level of power for its class, and it steers, stops and rides very nicely indeed. What more could you ask for a retro style bike that comes in at under £4,000, brand spanking new? It's a perfect machine for sunny days like this, getting out in the countryside and exploring, or indeed just buzzing around town running errands. I'm sure it won't be long before there's a host of third-party accessories out there for those that want to do a little bit of personalisation or customisation, but as it is, it's a fantastic little bike, and I think Honda are going to sell bucket loads of these. So if you've got any questions or there's something you'd like to know that I haven't spoken about in the video, then drop those in the comment section down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And all that leaves me to say is until next time, thanks for watching, take care, ride safe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.